Nina Albelo is a social worker and mental health advocate committed to advancing suicide prevention, mental wellness, and children's mental health. After losing her brother Tony to suicide in 2018, Nina and her mother co-founded Tony's Tribe, a program of the nonprofit Breaking the Barriers to honor his memory and support other families impacted by suicide loss. With a Bachelor of Social Work and certification as a crisis counselor, Nina served on the suicide prevention crisis lines for 3 years, gaining extensive frontline experience in crisis response, intervention, and community support. She has organized and led high-impact awareness events, developed community-based programs, and shared her story on both local and national platforms. Through her professional work and advocacy, Nina continues to champion hope, resilience, and systematic change in mental health, driven by her belief that every life is worth saving and every story deserves to be heard.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Again, my name is Nina Albelo. I am a social worker and I am a certified crisis counselor. Today I'm here on behalf of NAMI, Broward, and I am also here on behalf of Tony's Tribe. As Bruce explained in my intro, so what propelled my work in the crisis field, suicide prevention field, was losing my older brother Tony to suicide back in 2018. After losing him, I felt that I needed to learn everything there was to learn about crisis intervention and how to help others. And so I delved into it, and since then I've immersed myself in the community. I work with other local organizations such as NAMI just to make sure that this message is expanded way beyond our tribe, but through other organizations as well. So today we're just going to be talking about hope, right? Hope is what sparks a conversation amongst each other, and just understanding mental health better, the 988 lifeline, and also how we can all help each other as a community. So essentially why this conversation matters is because more than 1 in every 5 US adults suffer from some form of mental illness. That's a very striking statistic. We walk through our Publix every day and we don't tend to notice that the person in front of us could be going through something. Sometimes we're so stuck in our world that we don't realize that. I like to point that out because it's important to say that these aren't just numbers. These are people. These are real people that are sitting next to us every day, that might be driving next to us, or they might be in the Starbucks line with us. So I always like to point out that this is a part of being human, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. So 988 is the suicide and crisis lifeline. As Bruce mentioned, I was on those front lines for about 3 years. I was one of the head counselors on that line, and I always like to point out that that line is a free and confidential line. On that line, our job is not to Baker act someone. That's not what we're there for. Our job is to listen, to be a person, to give a space, and to provide hope. And through that hope, we're able to connect them with resources. So when people are in need, they know where to go and they know how to seek that assistance. Additionally, on the lifelines, I always like to point out that there is no time limit. There's no guideline as to how many times you can call. That line is always open for you. Someone's always there to listen. So sometimes people call 988 when they're feeling overwhelmed, when they're feeling anxious, when they're feeling depressed. Sometimes people feel that 988 might just be a line that you call when you're having thoughts of harming yourself, but it's actually open for everyone. Sometimes you're having a rough day and you don't have someone to talk to. Let's say you don't have a therapist. This line is open for you. You're welcome to call this line and speak and vent and just tell them what's going on so that you have somebody there in your corner. So these are just some of the signs to look for in your peers, in your friends, in your family. These are some very basic signs. Basic mood changes, so feeling sad, angry, hopeless, talking about feeling trapped or as if they're a burden. They're saying that they're burdening you guys, that they just want to stand away for a bit, withdrawing from friends or activities that they liked. So if they liked working out or if they liked playing basketball and they stopped doing those things, that might be something, to be like, hey, what's going on? How come you stopped doing that? Changes in sleep is a really big one. So if they're not sleeping at all, or maybe if they're sleeping too much, that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Risky behavior. Sometimes we find that people may engage in non-self-injurious suicidal behaviors, And what that can look like is it may not be something that's obvious, but they can be doing things such as drinking more often, but making it look like it's a social occasion so that people are not aware of what they may be feeling. And finally, randomly giving away their items, saying, hey, I really don't need this anymore. I'm just gonna start giving away these items that you know are probably really useful for them. And so how you can help, right? I always say that the first step is listening without judgment. And then the second part of this is asking someone directly. It's okay to ask someone if they're having thoughts of suicide. I get it. It's a big, scary S word. We always say it. But it's all right to ask. 9 times out of 10, you find that once you say that word, you've opened up a new chapter. You've opened up a safe space where they feel that they can be honest and they can tell you, hey, actually, yeah, I am thinking about that. I always like to highlight the fact that you want to seek support for this person, but you want to make sure that you're safe at the same time. If this person is threatening to harm themselves or threatening to harm you, and they have a way to complete this, then you may want to seek help from the local authorities. But if they are in a safe space and they're willing to talk, then you can reach out to 988. Again, prevention starts with awareness. So together we can strengthen our communities just by raising awareness around mental wellness and suicide prevention. I always believe that healing begins when we connect with others, when we sit down and we ask, how are you? And not just good, I mean like really, how are you? And so these are just some local resources. I did go ahead and put the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline on there for you guys. I did include NAMI Broward, which has various support groups for those who may be struggling, family members of those who may be struggling. They have education programs, they have certification programs, and they do lots of community outreach, just like you guys saw on that event you guys are participating on in Thanksgiving. And then finally, I put on here Tony's Tribe. As I mentioned earlier, guys, Tony's Tribe was actually an organization we founded shortly after Tony's passing. And so what we do is we go out into the community, we advocate, we provide support for those who may be struggling, we provide support for families who may be struggling, and also families who may have lost someone this way. We try to provide that after that loss support, because it's a difficult time for them and we understand it, and so we try to give them that space. And then finally, I just want to remind you guys to take care of yourselves. Don't forget to talk about how you feel. Identifying triggers is always very helpful. I learned that along my journey. Doing something you enjoy. I think a lot of us get caught up in our day-to-day lives and we forget to take time to do things that are good for us, things that we enjoy, things that help us relax. And then just finally, just being kind to yourself. Sometimes we could be really hard on ourselves, and I think the outside world is hard enough. And sometimes it's okay to take a step back and take a few breaths and gather ourselves and try to move forward through that. Any questions?
Well, that conversation, I mean, that's that canned response, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. How do we feel comfortable going from that to, are you contemplating suicide? I mean, is there a step in between? I mean, how do you really feel? Even when you dive in, I find when I ask those questions, you're not really drawing them out. Is there another phrase or something that you can use to try to get a little deeper?
So I think sometimes, like you said, when we say how are you doing, it kind of falls on deaf ears. People don't really recognize that. Sometimes the approach that I like to use is what's going on? And it kind of opens a different door, because it's not, oh, I'm good. It's, oh, she asked me what's going on. Oh, there's so much going on. Where do I start? And so as you go through that conversation, then you kind of begin to understand, oh, there is a lot going on, but he's working through it. He's got it. Or there's a lot going on and they're not doing well. And you start to uncover that. But sometimes it is just reframing, just saying it a different way.
And from that, do you find that it's okay, and not particularly, are you contemplating suicide? Are you thinking about harming yourself or anything like that? Is that?
Yeah.
That's a phrase to.
Yeah. So depending on how the conversation is going, that's definitely a phrase that can be used. Are you thinking of harming yourself? I know sometimes it feels like using suicide is really like blunt. It's very upfront. And so sometimes that's not comfortable, and we want to stay in what is comfortable for us in trying to help someone else. So yeah, it's okay to be like, hey, are you having thoughts of harming yourself today? And sometimes, when that person tells you, hey, yeah, I am, trained crisis counselor, we're trained to be like, well, have you thought about that? Do you know how you're going to do that? Because in that way we know, hey, if we need to get this person in a center immediately, or can we talk them down and let's get them some outpatient support as opposed to inpatient.
So what do we do if someone tells us, we're thinking about that, or maybe contemplating suicide? I mean, we'll dial 988 and then we walk away, or how do you work that situation?
Yeah, definitely. So normally what I always recommend is that if you can stay with that person, it is good to stay with them, right? If it's a safe situation. We never want to risk our safety for the well-being of someone else. We want to make sure that everybody is safe. So as long as it's a safe situation and that person's comfortable too, because I know some people will be like, well, I'll call them, but I don't want you to be here. As long as it's comfortable and it's safe, I highly recommend staying with them. It's always good to remind them that there's someone there. And sometimes they don't even want to talk. They just want to know that there's someone else in this room.
Someone sees them.
Mm-hmm.
And just want to comment on what you said. We are the hardest on ourselves than anybody else, than most people are. Let me say that. So that is with the self-care part. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
So when that person is, you're looking at the mirror, you know what? You're not the problem. You're not the enemy. So, like you said, take a deep breath and have some encouraging words for yourself.
Yeah.
If you need it.
Would you think it'd be beneficial for you to share with us your personal story?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, when I lost Tony, I was very young. I was just 20 years old. And so when I lost him, I like to say that my rose-colored lenses came off. So I used to see the world as this beautiful place. And then when I lost him, I saw this complete other side of the world. And I was like, how could this have happened? He was 5 years older than me, but we were best friends. We knew that in this life we were gonna go through it together, whether it was good or bad. And now I'm here by myself. And so through his loss, like I said, I was in a place where I needed to learn more about what happened. Tony began struggling when he was about 16 years old. And I don't mean outwardly struggling. He struggled kind of like in the sense of he would isolate a bit, but he would only talk to his friends. It was kind of a teenager thing, right? And then when he was 18, he attempted for the first time. We were able to find him, got him to the hospital in time, and they were able to save his life that day. And they went ahead and they Baker Acted him for 21 days. And when they released him, they gave us half a diagnosis. They said he might be bipolar, we don't know. Still trying to figure it out, give him some time. If he keeps acting the same way, then he's bipolar and he's major depressive. And they gave us a bag of pills and they sent him on his way. And so my mom spent months upon months going back and forth with him, trying to get him to treatment, trying to get him the support that he needed. But at the same time, the medication that he was prescribed at that time at the hospital was having an adverse effect on him. He was catching seizures and he was like, I'm not taking these. And so in his process of trying to acquire help, he would sit in these clinics for 4, 5, 6 hours trying to just get his first visit in, and my mom would be sitting there with him, and he'd get up and he'd walk out. He'd be like, I'm not gonna sit here for 6 hours waiting for help. And realistically, when you think about it, having someone who's not mentally stable waiting in a clinic with other people who are not mentally stable for 6 hours is not conducive of anything good. And so that's what it looked like for a long time. It was very difficult too because Tony was an adult, and so my mom could only do so much, right? His medical decisions were made by him. If he did not want to take medication, we could not force him. And so these were the challenges that we faced as a family. And so what ensued after that is what we would call the fire drills. And our fire drills were crisis. Tony would go into crisis, and it would become us trying to figure out how we can get him out of crisis, who can get him on the phone, who can calm him down, how can we stop this? And we had 7 years of crisis until our final one. Once Tony passed away, I remember we sat around the ICU and my mom looked at us and she was like, how could this have happened? We were a tribe, we were Tony's tribe. And we were like, okay. And today the tribe was born. And so we go out and we tell his story, we tell our story, and we educate to make sure that no other family has to endure this kind of pain. Because as close-knit as our family was, we could have never imagined that this would have become our reality. But as I mentioned, sometimes people are going through things that are deeper than the surface and deeper than they care to admit sometimes. That's why we're here and that's why we do this work.
Tony's Tribe, you say you provide support, like do you guys do support groups or what do you do?
But what we do is we take phone calls. Like my lovely mother in the back, she gets calls from moms sometimes walking out of a hospital telling her, hey, I just lost my child, and she's supporting them through those losses. And then the siblings, I tend to work with them as well, because sometimes in the midst of the loss, siblings kind of become the forgotten mourner. They're kind of in the background. And so it's always important to kind of remind them, hey, there's somebody out there that gets it. I know how you feel. So NAMI has a lot of certification courses for family members of people struggling, so that you know how to help your family member and how to work through those moments as well. So I don't know if you guys are aware, a lot of people aren't. So they do have mobile crisis units. And these crisis units will go out to wherever that person is needing support.